Okay, fantastic. Welcome, everybody. And as advertised, we're going to talk about the fear of failure. And the reason why we chose this particular subject was, first of all, you indicated that that is something you wanted to talk about, but why it was even on the list of possible things to discuss is because it is arguably the most important thing that keep us away from success. Let's look at it just quickly in this way. If you don't try anything new, you will be in the lucky position to never experience the fear of failure. And this subject will be totally irrelevant to you. However, if you've ever pushed the boundaries of your own comfort zone, you will know what we talk about when we talk about the fear of failure. And it's also not something that it's an illness that you have, and then once had it, you are guaranteed to never have it ever again. It's one of those things that whenever you push the boundaries, it presents. And how you deal with that is a very important driver of failure. It's also a very important driver of success. And for that reason, it is really, really, really important to develop strategies to deal with this. And that is why we discussed this. And I'm so happy for both Annemarie and Ronwin to be here. I'm pretty sure they've had multiple cycles of this, and we are going to explore that. And of course, I'm not immune. I'm going through my own versions of this, and I will be sharing along the way about that as well. But let me introduce you to the two that are going to be sharing with you, just so that you understand their background. So, Annemarie, you achieved your first goal of recuperating your investment in the Remotania coaching program in 4 months. And then you went on to regularly earn more online than in your well-established local business from month 5 onwards. Tell us what you do online and how that impacts on your lifestyle.
Mariana, thank you for this session. I've always been passionate about customer relationship management, and that's the main focus of my business. In the last couple of years, there's been a massive shift to what prospects and customers experience during every interaction with your brand. Now, I offer various CRM solutions to make those interactions meaningful, to help you turn prospects into customers and to keep your existing customers happy.
Mm-hmm. And how does that impact your life, your online world?
Mariana, it's been a massive shift because I always used to stress about where I'm going to find my next client. And that was one of my biggest fears when I started with online remoting. But now I know there's this massive base of clients looking for what the services I offer. So there's one stressor away immediately. I don't have to worry about marketing, my marketing budget, because your profile is your biggest marketing asset. And well, from a personal growth point of view, you always have to up your skills to stay competitive and to offer your clients, the latest in what's happening in your field. So yeah, there's always room for growth, and that's where fear of failure enters, because you have to try new systems, new things all the time. But it also, it keeps you on your toes, because there are many other freelancers who do the same as you. So you have to be at the top of your game all the time. Good. But it's been so worth it.
And how did your life change? How did your lifestyle change? What was the impact on your life?
Mariana, my lifestyle didn't change that much because I always had my own business, and I worked locally. I worked virtually for many clients. So I've always had that freedom and flexibility. But yeah, now sometimes I go boogie boarding on a Friday because I know my American client, by the time I'm dressed and warm and have my cup of coffee, he only wakes up. So then we have our interaction. So yeah, it's been great. But I think one of the biggest things is less stress. Finally, after the initial stress of getting started.
Okay. Ronwin, you had a very stable and well-paying corporate position, but your life circumstances require that you break out of constraints like how much or when you can take leave, just as one example. So you turned to online remoting to cater to your changed lifestyle. Tell us what you do online and how that compares with the work and the lifestyle you had in your corporate position.
Sure, thank you, Anna-Marie. So yes, I play in the information technology field, which is very, very competitive. I have never been this typical techie person that does all the technical jargon. So from my side, I bring the soft skills. I have enough background in terms of information technology and the jargon and the business processes. So I act as a bridge between the business and the technology. And I look at inefficient business processes or operational procedures, and I use the business data to determine what course of action can be taken to implement optimized solutions and take their business to the next level. I mean, any business owner, they don't want to be caught up with the jargon of information technology. So I try and fill that gap so that they can focus on their business and I can focus on the data and the business processes.
Cool.
So yeah, how did it impact my life? My husband accepted a job in Abu Dhabi in June 2021. And he actually accepted the job a lot earlier, but he actually moved permanently to Abu Dhabi. Me being in a corporate environment and having to take leave every time that I wanted to come and visit him, it was becoming very challenging. So I started with the online remote. I had the luxury of coming to work here in Abu Dhabi and going back, but I was able to resign at the end of 2022 after I started with my first job in May that specific year. I still did this part-time and I earned my first $1,000 in November that year. And then I started to realize that I can actually achieve something with this. So I resigned and then I moved here to Abu Dhabi at the beginning of this year full time. And I can move back and forth to South Africa whenever I want, however I want, and I just have to take my laptop with. So it had a huge impact in the way I do things.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm pretty sure when you first started your online journey, that was probably the most acute bout of fear of failure that you experienced. Am I right? In terms of your online journey, because it's a completely new world that you need to conquer. Can you just tell us what you did in those very first stages and the very first time that you had to make this big change because you've made this commitment and you start to understand, but this is a completely different world and I just wasn't quite prepared for what I'm getting into. How did you experience that and what was it like for you? Anna-Marie?
Mariana, yes, if I think back now, I just remember overwhelm, complete overwhelm, and not having a clue what to do. And there, the Q&As were really, they were my lifesavers because there I met other Remotanians in Ronwen. That's where we originally met. Same as Cornay, I think we started at the same time. Is to see that everybody felt the same. I wasn't alone. And that to me that really helped. But yeah, it was just, I think for me, it was, what if I don't do this? That was my biggest driver is what's the alternative? Is to go back to corporate, which I definitely didn't want to do. So I just had to push myself. I just had to continue doing it. And the motivation from you really helped a lot. But I think it was mostly knowing that there were others in the same position who felt exactly the same. I mean, now I can laugh about it, but there were times when I felt like crying. I think I did.
And you, Ronwen, how did you experience that?
Yeah, well, I think similar to Anna-Marie, it's just overwhelming I was excited about the opportunity, and I've always somehow had this thing pop up. I always said I'm at an age where what do I do? I always knew I wanted to do my own thing, but in the information technology field, how do you do your own thing? I mean, it's so competitive. I can't start a company like Anne-Marie did. So and this freelancing option always popped up. And then I would push it away and then again. And I think when my husband moved, I realized this might be my angle to start doing this. So, but initially, I mean, it's overwhelming. How do you enter a world of information technology and you enter this? It's like going into an abyss. You don't know what's on the other side. So it was extremely overwhelming. I tried to join, but I felt like I don't know, am I good enough to join this session? I didn't even try to say something when the other people, because you had people that were naturally, it just came natural when they were in those sessions. But I think eventually you like Anne-Marie says, you start to build relationships and you see the same faces. I mean, this morning when I logged on and I saw Ria and I saw Corneille, it's comforting to see a familiar face. And when you join week after week, the Remotania sessions, you get comfortable with the people that you see every week. And it sort of gives you that sense, it's okay, I can start exploring and step out of my comfort zone to add stuff. And then when you add stuff and you get a wow response, this is all confidence boosting, because I mean, the corporate world can be paralyzing to your confidence. That's what I experienced. It was crippling. I didn't believe in myself anymore. I didn't believe I could add value because I was sort of parked in a little corner, just a pair of hands doing nice things. So yeah, it was overwhelming, but I mean, the fact that you engage in the community and you see these faces and you see the people going through exactly the same thing that you are going through, helped a lot to overcome that fear, that initial fear, definitely.
I had an experience that relates very much. Both of you mentioned the importance of relationship when you work on overcoming the fear of failure. The fact that you can relate to others in a similar situation, and the confidence boosting to realize it's not you. It is part of the nature of the beast. It is what it is. Being fearful of failure is part of entering and doing something new that you haven't done before. It is part and parcel of the package. It's not something you can avoid. For me, it was kind of a biggie because I was made redundant on the wrong side of 60, sorry, which means I worked very meticulously having immigrated to another country. Your finances kind of take a dip when you do that. It's kind of expensive to do something like that. And I worked meticulously over a period of more than 10 years to get financially to a point where I can retire at retirement age, right? And then a few years prior to that, being made redundant and all of that falling flat. And you realize I don't have another 10 years. I have X number of years that I can do that. You realize that for me, what I realized was I cannot take the risk of employment again. Because in the latter part of your career, yes, you know a whole lot of stuff, but you also perceive to be close to retirement, and there are younger people coming up and doing stuff, and your career kind of taper off. And many people experience what I have experienced at that time of your life, to be made redundant, and all your carefully planned stuff just goes out of the window. So I had to decide I am not going to do the thing that I know I'm very good at. I had a really marvelous job. For all my corporate jobs was really marvelous, and I thoroughly enjoyed them. Very well paid and all of the wonderful stuff. I couldn't take the risk of actually taking another job. I needed to do something that will not make the same thing happen to me again. But that was majorly scary because I've never done anything like that before in my life. And then just as I planned what I wanted to do, COVID came, so I couldn't do what I wanted to do, and I had to start from scratch.
Sure.
And that's when I started Remotania. And once again, it's this relationship thing, because I realized what happened to me is going to happen to so many other people, unplanned, and they will have to make a plan to see it through. So I wasn't alone in my quest to do something to really cater for what could have been a disastrous thing that happened to me. And if it happened to me again in employment, I wouldn't be able to cope financially. And by starting Remotania and by starting this journey with all of you, and as you know, there's been a lot of people now going through the programs, it helped me build a completely new life for myself, even as I help you build a completely new life for yourself. And in a way, it is pulling together, it is doing it together that helps everybody alleviate the pain of the fear of failure. Am I right? That's more or less what it is. Doing it together really, really, really
No,
does help.
definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Mariana, and I think life throws things at you that you didn't expect. And I think if you in this environment, you sort of have more control as to how you do things, if that makes sense. Because I mean, my husband lost his job just before COVID, even before we knew what the effect of COVID is going to be. So he had to take this offer and come to Abu Dhabi. But I mean, we were left in a situation like, how will I ever be able to join him? And yeah, it's like you say, doing things together and hearing other people's stories and doing it together sort of makes it a lot less intimidating.
You touch on something
Yeah.
else, Ron, when you say it's not only the doing it together, it is also the fact that you are more in control in this online remoting world. In other words, failure is not a binary thing, and it's also not something that happens to you. When I was made redundant, it was something that happened to me. Right? Creating success online is something I can do, I can be in control of, and it's not a binary thing. If you go through a structured process, you actually build step by step, and you can create success. You can literally build success. It's not something that happens to you or something that doesn't happen. If one thing doesn't happen, you can figure out what to change, and then you can change it. So you can literally build success step by step. It does help to have a structured approach, and it does help to realize I am in control. But does it take away the fear of failure? What do you say?
I think it does, yes, because I remember for me is part of what helped me to overcome that fear of failure, or call it fear of change, fear of failure, fear of uncertainty. I mean, there are so many things sitting behind fear, but for me was definitely to have set goals with deadlines and to break the big thing down into smaller things and just reach the next goal, is not focus on. And it was difficult, and I often say to people in the Facebook group who just start out and they're already concerned about what their profile is going to look like, that was my fear as well. And Mariana, you helped me a lot with, don't worry about that yet, just one bite at a time is how you eat that elephant, is to focus on the next small step to take. And not to be overwhelmed by the big thing. And how am I going to write proposals? And how am I going to get my first client? And so I think that to me was the biggest thing, was to just break it down into smaller goals. Yeah.
Does that help you overcome the fear? Does that help you overcome the fear by doing something that's achievable as your next step? Was that how you did it?
Yes. Absolutely, Mariana. And it's still, I mean, I mentioned just now is, I go boogie boarding as often as when I started out, I took the smallest waves there were. I mean, you don't go for the big ones right at the back, but and that's how you build confidence. Is you think, hey, I can do this, and then you go for the medium waves, and you think, hey, it's not that bad. And then when you hit those big ones, you experience that total exhilaration and joy, and then the fear is gone. I mean, I still get scared when there are currents coming, and you think, So I link that to, you know, having to upskill and having to do new things online that I've never done before. But you learn to manage it. And I think what you said is, once you realize that you are in control of your journey, it gives you a lot of freedom, and that also takes away the fear.
Takes away or make it manageable?
Takes away some of the fear.
Takes away some of the fear.
Yeah.
What do you say, Ronan?
Yes, I think I thought about when I prepared for this, I thought about a lot of things, and I really couldn't find any real risk in terms of joining the online world. I mean, it's obviously how fast you grow this online journey depends on your support structure. I mean, you can't get away from the fact that some people just need to earn money immediately. You can do this part-time. So I couldn't find anything that I can say that it's a huge risk to work online. And like Annemarie, you can determine the pace at what you want to do this, and how you will overcome the next fear. Because, I mean, doing something new, there's always going to be fear. Even if you're successful, and I still believe all the people that we think never experience fear, they still do. So taking small steps, putting goals for yourself and achieving that builds your confidence, and it builds that perception that I can do this, and you don't need to compare yourself with anyone else, because it's your journey, and you want to go where you need to go. And yeah, I mean, that definitely helps me with this fear. I can only do what I can, and it's good enough for me.
Ron, when stepping away from the security of a salary into taking ownership of your own income in online remoting, that's a biggie. How did you manage dealing with that loss of, or apparent loss of security?
Yeah, well, like I've mentioned before, Mariana, my husband's position and job here in Abu Dhabi gave me that freedom to maybe have failure.
Okay.
I didn't need to earn that big salary anymore, really, to keep the household going. So that helped a lot. But if I look back, I mean, since I started full time, I think it was about 3 to 4 months, I replaced my net salary. So it happened a lot quicker. But that fear of not being able to contribute, I didn't have that because of the support structure. And you need to take that into consideration. But like I've mentioned before, you can do this part-time. You don't need to. I did it part-time for almost a year. It takes hard work, and you need to know that. But are you willing to face that? Then you will succeed.
For me, it was a bit different. I'm single, so I don't have a financial support system. And for me, the thing that made it work for me is the fact that I realized that the financial impact of having been made redundant at the age that I was made redundant, I literally couldn't afford risking having another one of those. So I had to take the risk financially to take control of my own finances. And I think the realization that an employed salaried position as you get on in your career is almost the least secure option that you have, because you're totally not in control and you totally don't know what's going to happen next. Whereas if you do take control and you are in control, then you can literally start to build success. Whereas I realized my most risky option would have been to take another employed position, even though I was so used to the security of a salary. And for me, that realization made me willing to take the financial risk of going on my own and building my own success. But it is a big thing to leave the apparent security of a salary or a fixed income per month. But like you say, very quickly, you earn way more than what you used to earn, and it doesn't have a ceiling. You can take it as far as you want to take it, and that caters for that initial false sense of security in a salaried position. But it's not easy to move. It's not easy to move like that either. Like you you had another financial buffer, your husband's salary. In my case, to realize the risk of taking the risk of another salary is just going to increase a financial risk. It's a false sense of security. And I needed to work through the false sense of security of a salaried position before I was willing to start to own it and build my own success. And then you get to a point very quickly where you realize, oh my goodness, I should have done this 10 years ago, if not 20 years ago. Because, like you say, financially, once it starts, it really does increase fairly substantially, fairly quickly. But that does not take away the fear of failure next time when you start something new, right? Have you tried something new online and suddenly this fear of failure come up again? Any one of you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, once you reach a certain level, like Anna Marie and myself, I think we have spoken about it, so that's why I'm mentioning it. We know now that we are burning hours. Let's face it, we are burning hours, and you do get to a point where you realize there must be better ways of doing this. I mean, really. So we now at a stage where we need to figure out how are we going to get people in our network that can assist us in going to the next level. And it's for unfamiliar territory. How do we start? Where do we start? Do we continue with what we're currently doing, or do we need to change? I mean, all those questions pop up, and some days you feel confident and yes, I've got this, and the next day, I mean, you back to feeling small and not knowing what to do. So it's the fear of failure is going to always be there. When you reach a level, you take the next step, there's always going to be fear of failure. And then you have to go back to taking small steps. And I mean, Mariana, you always said once the ball starts rolling, it is really going to pick up speed. And I thought, yeah, well, I don't know, maybe not for me. But I mean, and it's true.
It is true.
It does happen like that.
It is
So
true.
I will tell you something, and then maybe you're at a stage in your life where you don't believe it, but I can promise you, I've experienced it. Experience is the best way to tell a story.
Cool. Anna-Marie, you're kind of quiet.
Now I'm listening, I'm learning as we go along. No, Ronwen, it reminds me, we've been, and this is part of the Remotania joy, is to get to know people and work together with them to offer, value to clients. So Ronwen and I are currently working on a project together for a client, and it's great. But for both of us, we kind of, it started as we're going to do just this little bitty for the client, and then it expanded and it's grown, and we kind of just were all thrown into the deep water together, and we are learning as we go along. So there's almost, now I experience a sense of not fear of failure, but maybe it is fear of failure. Is what if it doesn't work for this client? What if there are high expectations, but what if what we are doing is not good enough? So then you have to up your game again. So there's constantly that little, but I think it's a good thing too, because that's what drives you to learn more, to grow more, to find out more about certain things. So, and that's also the beauty of online remoting, is you choose an area, but it kind of evolves naturally. I mean, if I just think of way back when, and I know Kunay is in the audience, is how she started out. She jokes about, she was just a housewife and a mother, but she knew she wanted to write. And then she started with small things, and now it's just escalated into something much bigger. And I think that's the nice surprise about what you get if you stick to it, is it will take you on a journey where you never thought you were going to go. So yeah, you just have to get or learn to acknowledge that fear and determine where it comes from and why it's keeping you back. I think that's already a big step forward. And then you learn to manage it better, because it might be something that a teacher said to you in school about you not being able to spell, or you being too stupid to figure out the math test, or anything silly, and that sticks to you. So sometimes it's something small that happened to us, but it had a big impact. And that creates a mental block. And I think we all have that thing, but it's to let go and to just believe in yourself and know that you can be successful.
I think reality
I think we
is...
don't...
Go for it, Anna-Marie.
I think a big mistake we all make is we don't pat ourselves on the back enough to acknowledge the things we are good at. And once we do that more, that fear will start to disappear.
And the nice thing about online freelancing is it's very direct. If you do a small project for a customer, and they give you good feedback, it's that pat on the back. It's not like an employed position where you have maybe a performance assessment once a year, and they're too scared to tell you how good you are, because then you're going to ask for a raise. So you're constantly being challenged rather than being affirmed. In the online remoting scene, especially if you do online freelancing on the online freelancing platforms, the feedback is very direct and very often, and that helps a lot to build confidence. Am I right?
Yeah, yes, it does.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, I mean, if I think back, I think my biggest fear, besides taking part in the community, was how would I decide on my micro specialization? I mean, in this IT world, there are so many things that you can offer. And to be honest, that was my biggest fear initially. What if I select something that's not going to be in demand, or that no one's going to want that? And I mean, I'm this IT person with 30 years of experience, and I started off with Excel. I mean, not that I'm downgrading Excel, but that is what I started with. Because you know what? I felt confident enough in working with Excel and providing solutions with Excel to have a conversation starter. And I mean, I have done a couple of Excel jobs, but that's not mainly what I do. That was just my conversation starter. And so I think initially deciding on what to do, and that could have held me back a lot. But I had to decide it's fine if you just select Excel and get going. Because like I've mentioned before, that sort of just sparks the conversation. And then what you actually can offer and the value that you actually can add becomes the conversation.
Just reading here, Cornay put in the chat box, my definition of fear is fake evidence appearing real. How do you respond to that?
I think it is so true, because it very often is, it's limiting beliefs we have, or thinking we're not good enough, or scared of moving out of your comfort zone. But like everybody says, the magic happens outside of your comfort zone. So yeah, I think unfortunately limiting beliefs can be disastrous.
Okay, so can I then make a statement? If you are experiencing the fear of failure, you're in a good space. What you need to avoid is to push yourself to the point where the level of the fear of failure that you experience is such that it paralyzes you. You need to break it down into biteable chunks, because those biteable chunks also makes the fear of failure manageable. And as you climb that ladder of biteable chunks towards success, it also helps you manage your fear of failure. So it's unavoidable to experience the fear of failure if you are wanting to build success and you are engaging with something new. You will never not have it. Everybody has it. The only thing you need to manage is not to allow yourself to want to take such big steps that your fear of failure becomes so big that it paralyzes you, and then you take no step forward. That's the way in which to manage the fear of failure. The fact that you have it doesn't mean that you can't succeed. The fact that you have it means that you are willing to step out of your comfort zone, and that's a fantastic thing, because that's where you create success. But you manage it by taking biteable chunks.